We're going to be covering today is a story about how one person owned a really key business unit with zero actual ownership stake. He told us about a construction client where one employee was responsible for about $15 million in business value, and the only thing tying him to the company was his W-2.
Performed for a year, and at the end of the year, they did the scorecard and paid him a big bonus. So it was kind of free agency as soon as that bonus was paid. So that was the risk, is that this guy was key, and he was a free agent every year after the bonus was paid. Your salary's top quartile, your bonus is top quartile. Everything feels right to us, but we're in a whole new world now, and you've brought us to this new world, and we're now relying on you to keep us, viable in this new market. This is a whole new operating system for him, and the relationship between this guy and the company needed to evolve.
Well, let's. I think we're probably live at this point on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
let's.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So, let me open it up. So, welcome back to the episode 2 of the McFarland Method. We're talking today about ownership, acting like owners. Your best people are already acting like owners. The question is, are you treating them like it before they walk? Today, we're going to be talking about a $15 million employee and what happens when ownership behavior has nowhere to go. So today, let me talk a little about the format before we jump in. Every episode is going to have 2 parts. Part 1 is a public conversation, framework, stories, tools that you can use, whether you're an owner or a coach. It's going to be shareable, practical, useful. Part 2 is going to be members only, just for coaches. That's going to be where we share and talk about stuff that we maybe don't want to say publicly. What owners are doing wrong, how to coach the uncoachable, the messy reality of the work that we're doing every day. So if you want to see that full conversation, join us on LinkedIn, search for the McFarland Method coaching community, or check the show notes if you're not watching live. What we're going to be covering today is a story about how one person owned a really key business unit with zero actual ownership stake. We're going to Byron is going to share his framework for predicting, or his framework of behaviors that predict ownership mindset, a diagnostic that coaches can run with clients this week to get the conversation started about the ownership mindset. And then we're going to talk about the connection between retention and business valuation. So there's a lot to cover today. And for the coaches listening, we're going to be talking about what owners do that kill this behavior, even when they're trying to help. So that's going to be members only. Because, well, you know why. So, Dad, in prep for this episode, you told us about a construction client where one employee was responsible for about $15 million in business value, and the only thing tying him to the company was his W-2. Let's walk me through that conversation or that situation.
Yeah, we had an old school founder who built this business on a handshake and charisma, and all of the projects that they did, he was running and selling and managing probably from the cab of his pickup. And that got their company up to about 40 million in revenue. And then they started to attract the attention of a more sophisticated clientele. Majority of their clients at that point were mom and pop, is how we would describe them. But they just bought based on his past performance. And these new clients or these new opportunities were more sophisticated. And that was a whole new set of problems for the business, and that contracts with contingencies and then a complicated sales process where the buyers were in platoons of buyers. They had like a committee to buy it, and you had to determine who in that committee was actually going to make the decision and navigate that. Well, this one key employee had figured all that out and successfully won them projects in this new, more complicated corporate environment. And they shot from 40 million to 90 million in revenue over the course of just a couple of years. And normally when a business owner hears that, they think, oh God, they probably lost money or didn't make any money. But the fact is they made more money as a percentage of sales because they really really stepped up and did the work and delivered on the scope and the schedule. And this one person was largely responsible for nearly all of those results, Alex. When I asked the owner about this person's role, he said, yeah, if it were not for this person, we would not be here at this level. And I quantified that level at another $15 million in value that this person had created for the business, but didn't have any ownership in it, which was quite a risk for him, because if he leaves, they're unable to continue to serve that particular marketplace.
Yeah. So this is, it's not just that he owns that like the projects necessarily that he's doing them, but we both talk about the importance of being able to bring in new business and how rare that is, to be able to do that effectively and profitably. Like you said, a lot of owners probably hear that and think, yeah, okay, great. You double the size of the company, but tell me about what'd you take home?
Yeah.
So, let's just talk about what this guy was doing. What did he do differently that enabled him to kind of take the business from reputation-based selling to this sales by committee?
Yeah, so I asked him. I interviewed this young man, and he shared with me that he was working the committee to determine who on the committee was actually going to make the decision, and respected everybody like they were the decider, and did what he could to meet their needs at whatever level they were at and the questions they were asking. And he built, I would call it constituency, as he was navigating the sales process, and got buy-in from these various stakeholders on him and the company's ability to deliver on the results. So he was a excellent collaborator, and I would say he was probably a fairly well, without training, negotiator. He understood all negotiation without having spent any time understanding the principles of negotiation.
So that's an interesting thing, because I hear really good at negotiation, but when you came into this situation, how was this guy getting compensated for building, adding $50 million to the bottom line or to the top of the line?
Yeah. Well, we tend not to be the best advocates for ourselves, Alex. It's a lot easier to advocate for somebody else or to pursue outcomes for someone else, like the company you work for, than it is typically for yourself. And sometimes the nature of the relationship with the owner presents risk in you actually asking for what you want. And I think that was the case in this situation. Is the relationship was really close, and I think this person was probably waiting for the owner to do something, as opposed to having to ask him to do something.
Well, that's not uncommon, right? To have people kind of waiting and avoiding difficult conversations, hoping that somebody's going to do something different than they've done in the past. How did you end up in this? Like, let's take a step back. So for those that would be interested in, how are you even having this conversation? What's going on with the business owner that you're even becoming aware of this? I think what both of us would look at and go, this is a problem, that this person is only tied to the business by what I'm guessing is taxable, just employee income.
Yeah, it's all W-2, and nothing was subject to forfeiture, or nothing was contingent upon or retention. Everything was paid as it was earned, so to speak. He performed for a year, and at the end of the year, they did the scorecard and paid him a big bonus. So it was kind of free agency as soon as that bonus was paid. But so that was the risk, is that this guy was key, and he was a free agent every year after the bonus was paid. So they had an annual review, and he had finally asked for, what's in it for me? I mean, I know I'm doing all the right things. I know I'm contributing value. I see the results. My bonus is paid based on profitability. I know how much money we're making. What's in it for me long term? What am I doing here? I'm sacrificing for my family. I'm on the road going to job sites. I'm on the road going to conferences. I'm on the road seeing prospects and clients. He's doing the kind of things that an owner would do, to build value that's sustainable. He was just being rewarded in a bonus at the end of the year. I mean, it was a nice bonus. However, it wasn't meeting those needs of, I want to build something or be part of something that's being built. And so the owner is looking around for a resource, and the first thing they do is go to their network. Does anybody know anybody that has any expertise in this particular area? And one of my clients happened to be in this person's business network and has done joint ventures with this business, and said, yeah, you need to talk to Byron, and Byron can help sort this thing out for you. So that was how they came to me, was through a referral from an existing client that happened to be in their network.
So you end up in this conversation with this guy. Now he's aware of this because after their annual review, this person initiated then, okay, it's time to have a conversation. He's not starting it. I guess I need to start it. And then that triggered the owner then to reach out and find somebody to help him navigate these waters. Okay. So typically when you're brought into these situations, from what I understand, a big part of what you do is interview these people that are key to the business that the owner suspects they probably need to be doing something for. This guy was exhibiting, I think, what you call an ownership mindset. You've got a framework for identifying these people, 5 behaviors that predict who's thinking like an owner, who's acting like an owner. Let's start with this example. What did you notice that, like, right at the top of mind, like these are the special behaviors that I'm looking for?
Well, when they made the migration from their previous way of doing business, which was kind of a yellow pad project management from the cab of the truck, to sophisticated project management with systems and technology, this person had to step in and help the project managers become proficient in utilizing the technology. And he probably...
But Byron, let me interrupt you really quick. Just give me this. Tell me what are they? And then you can kind of tell us about how you observed the behaviors, because I don't know if people are going to track.
Gotcha. So the first thing that he did is he behaved in an altruistic way. And altruism is one of the 5 categories of an ownership mindset. So he demonstrated a willingness to help people that were outside of his scope. He was not a project manager. He was in the pre-construction. He was the guy that designed the project and sold it, and then he should hand it off to the project managers. In this case, he had to stay involved to teach them how to actually do the work. So he demonstrated altruism, which would be what an owner would do to minimize risk of mistakes. Those mistakes cost money or lose reputation.
And that in that way that he stepped up was by helping out those technical people and the project managers. That makes sense. What else did you see? I mean, one virtue does not make a full profile.
No, and the second thing he did is he demonstrated a lot of conscientiousness, which is another category of ownership, of the ownership mindset. And that conscientiousness is that he would be looking at correspondence back and forth between the owners, the client's representation, and the project management staff, to look for mistakes that were occurring in communication that would represent risk to the company, his company. So he was really very conscientious. He didn't just sell it and then move on. He stayed involved to make sure that there were no mistakes, because he was aware that he had helped get this company into a new market and that he needed to stay involved beyond his scope as a pre-construction leader in the organization and actually pay attention to the details.
Did the owner tell him that he needed to do that, or was that something that he just initiated himself?
Actually, the owner had no idea that they were going to need that, because they had always done things a certain way, and now these new clients required adoption of more concise updates on the status of the project, so that they could predict when the project would be done and whether or not the expenses they were incurring along the way were actually legitimate. And he understood that in his experience with these new sophisticated buyers, that they had higher expectations for accuracy in the information that was available to them. And that's why he stayed involved. And the owner didn't know that was even necessary. This literally transformed the business.
It sounds like it. It sounds like, so I'm super curious. I mean, was the owner anxious about this reality prior to reaching out to somebody? Or was he kind of like, was he just under the impression that, hey, I'm paying, was he kind of the pool of people that think I'm paying this guy what he's worth? And so win-win. I'm the owner. You're the employee. I pay you the big bonus. See you next season. Or was he sweating this on some level?
I don't think there was any anxiety up until the point there was actually an expression of concern on the part of this key employee as to what's in it for me. I think prior to that, everything was fine. Your salary's top quartile, your bonus is top quartile. Everything feels right to us, but we're in a whole new world now, and you've brought us to this new world, and we're now relying on you to keep us, viable in this new market. We've invested time and money now in equipment and technology and people to function in this new world. So now the paradigm has shifted. This is a whole new operating system for them. And the relationship between this guy and the company needed to evolve.
Well, yeah, definitely needed to evolve. But it sounds like it wasn't something that the owner was aware of the need for the evolution. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, I don't think
in your experience.
I don't think the owner didn't really know that they weren't doing things right, or they weren't doing things consistent with what. And right is subjective. In this case, right is what does the person who's contributing so much value feel that would be a representation, a fair representation of their contribution. And in their mind, the owner's mind, the salary and the bonus was fair. However, in the mind of the participant, he's seeing how much value he's creating, and he's not getting any of it other than a current bonus. So he's not creating wealth that is available to him and his family in the future. And that's what he wanted, is an opportunity to get a piece of the pie of the business value that he'd helped to create, so that he wasn't just having to redo the year every year like a sales commission guy.
I'm curious, when you started interviewing him and talking to him about what, because you're learning about their business as you're talking to this key employee. I'm curious, was he clear about what he wanted? Did he have an idea in his mind, like, this is what I'm looking for? Or was that something that you guys had to develop together to bring clarity to?
Well, the most obvious destination for most people in this situation is, I'd like ownership. And so they're looking at it as, if I can get ownership, then I've got an asset that's appreciating in value. And then I have income that comes from that ownership in the way of profit sharing. And so that's what he was looking for, was that resource pool that if I continue to contribute at this level, I'm creating financial security for myself through the stock. And then I can use the profits that come off that stock to buy other assets to help reduce my reliance on the company ultimately, and be able to retire and take care of my children with college education and live a great life. That's what he was looking for. And when I explained to him that ownership has risks in it, that if the business doesn't work and you have ownership and you have to make a capital contribution, that's real money that needs to go back in. And he wasn't really thinking about that as an outcome. He was more focused on the appreciation.
Yeah, everybody loves to think about upside. The downside doesn't get a lot of play until you start having conversations with somebody like you. So, okay, so you've got this, you see a couple of these key behaviors. We'll have the complete OCB framework in the show notes. What is OCB, by the way, Dad?
Organizational citizenship behavior. And
okay,
I've translate that into These are the behaviors that are commonly found in people who are acting like they are owners.
So we've got this situation, coaches out there and owners out there thinking, yeah, I've got key employees, but I'm taking care of them. And then they hear this story they go, oh, I'm doing the same thing. I'm giving bonuses. I'm paying them well. They're top quartile. I'm doing what I need to be doing. This probably will cause them to, maybe think a little bit differently about that. And it seemed like the key framework was when the investment happened, when this new business was brought on and there was a need to change technology and maybe support staff and ways of doing things, that when the business started to change, not just grow, it seemed like that to me brings this key employee into a new category where we go, we're reliant on this person for the transformation, not just the growth. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it's like the coaching changes in sports where the coach has a whole new system they're running on. They build a whole new operating system with staff that understands the operating system. It's quite an investment by the institution that we're going to change to this. So yeah, in a business case, clearly these guys were betting on the viability of this long term by putting staff and the technology and actual substantial equipment, hard assets in play.
So let's transition then to talking about how does a coach or an owner run a diagnostic on this, right? Where am I at? So something they can do this week, we talked about pulling out an org chart or just put names on a board and circle the ones who are demonstrating these behaviors, solving problems before you have them, working, going above and beyond that conscientiousness, helping others without being asked. And then ask yourself, are you treating them, or am I or my clients, are they treating them like employees or like partners? And I think this is a key thing, Dad. You talk about being treated like an employee, being treated like a partner is different. It's not always about ownership. Can you flesh out some of the ways that a company would treat a key employee like a partner versus just another, W-2 on the payroll?
So if people have agency, which is they have control over their own day, and they're not having to submit themselves to some supervisor as to what I'm doing today and how I'm doing it, where I'm doing it. So having that kind of control and where you're working or how you're working or what you're choosing to prioritize based on your understanding of what the situation of the company, that's probably the highest non-financial form of ownership treatment that you can give an employee. For example, in my office, my assistant been with me for 7 years. I have no idea what or how or who or when she's doing what she's doing. She would tell me, "Hey Byron, I need to take some time off." I'm like, "When? You don't need to ask for permission. You have agency here because I rely on you to essentially own your responsibilities, and you've never let me down." So giving people agency would probably be the highest non-financial expression of an ownership, recognizing ownership behavior.
That makes a lot of sense. So that is I think you tied that back in previous conversations, that this is the thing that owners enjoy typically the most about their business, is that agency.
Yeah. Well, the new scorecard seems to be time freedom.
Yeah. Well, we definitely see that in our recruiting work. The expectations post-COVID, we're just in a different world. I mean, people, I think, all had a confrontation with reality that maybe generations that didn't deal with a pandemic didn't have to kind of ask themselves the questions that everybody that experienced COVID did. And one of those questions was, why am I doing this? And so the need for the why, I think, peaked in COVID, and the tail of that is we're still experiencing that. People are still going, why am I doing this? And I think the challenge to owners is to start coming up with or discovering more sophisticated stories for why. I think one of the challenges for owners is maybe before COVID, before this when the world was different, they were able to be more transactional in their relationships with their employees. And now they're seeing that they need to have a different kind of relationship, especially with the people that they depend on. Because not only did the labor market change, but all these people changed in that experience.
Yeah. I would recommend that anyone who's acting like they care about the place be given more grace.
So let's talk about why, really quick before we wrap the public segment here, about tying these people to business value. I think we've kind of circled around it. You made a calculation. You said this guy's he took the business from 40 to 90 million. He added $15 million in business value, and the only thing keeping him was the W-2. How does one go about looking at that, an individual employee contributor and their contribution to business value? Can you give us the high level on that?
Well, identifying the output of the person was, in this case, far easier because they had transformed their lines of service and added a whole new spectrum of service to their offering. And this guy was solely responsible for the revenue that was going into this line of service. And they're able to calculate that he was contributing just without doing any hard math, about $3 million in earnings a year to the company. And based on valuation methodology that I was familiar with regarding their business, and they weren't just pure general contractor construction, they had other aspects of their business. Their valuation methodology would be probably 5 times earnings. So 5 times 3 million is 15 million. And so he had created $15 million in value without us really doing any math. It was that obvious that he was contributing that much. And it isn't always that easy to do in a organization, especially if the person is let's say leading a department and that department is mature. Your only thing you could probably do then is look at the improvements in the department and ask how those improvements added to our margin, and then apply the formula, the multiplier to that, to whatever earnings adjustment you would make from that improvement. So we were lucky in this case. It was easy to score it, Alex.
Well, I think we'll go into, in later episodes, different ways to score and maybe do some case studies. I know that's something we're going to cover in the coaching community, about what are the different angles that one can take to figure this out. I think the key that I'm hearing in this conversation is that it's one thing to recognize the ownership, but without inviting them into ownership in maybe quality of life or in terms of financial stability or building value, that recognition without that invitation is wasted insight. So spotting the standouts is only step 1. We're going to get into, step 2, step 3, step 4. How do we build a culture around that in later episodes? If you're a coach, you're going to understand why the next section is probably going to be a little uncomfortable for us to have publicly. So that's why we're going to take it to a coaching community. We're going to talk about what do we do when the owner's the problem, right? None of us typically know. We all have blind spots, and as coaches, we're asked and invited to identify those blind spots, and then help the owner navigate to awareness and then action. So, we're going to talk about what do we do when an owner is actively driving anti-ownership out of the building, or driving ownership out of the building. And let's see, what else are they going to get in this? So we're going to talk about specific ownership behaviors. We're going to talk about how to coach an owner, your experience coaching owners that maybe aren't seeing this. What do you do when the problem, what do you do when the owner is the problem? That's really going to be our central theme. And then we're also going to have, after every episode in this segment, we'll have live Q&A. So also I'd note, we're going to have in the coaching community, we're going to have office hours, our first office hours, November 19th at 1 p.m. And we're going to sit down for an hour. We're going to talk, we're just going to riff about this. If there's questions, we're going to answer them. Otherwise, we're going to talk about the different frameworks that we're building and do some planning about how we're going to be moving forward. And that's going to be available to members of the McFarland Method coaching community. So join the community on LinkedIn for the real conversation. We're going to be going deeper on what owners do wrong, even when they're trying to help. Thanks for listening to this episode of the McFarland Method. New episodes are going to be available every week. So find us on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Dad, good talking with you as always.
Good to see you, Alex.
All right. Well, let's make the transition over to the coaching group.